Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bollywood Cinema Club, a bi-weekly show where we take a look at Indian cinema, be it Bollywood, Tollywood, or Collywood, and, well, everything in between. I am your host, Chris Stashew. I am the host of the Culture Cast, where this show spun off from. So if you want to hear more episodes of Indian cinema that aren't the Bollywood Cinema Club, the Culture Cast would be the place to go. Speaking of people that have talked about Indian cinema with me over on the Culture Cast and here, I am joined on this episode by my good friend. He is the host of his own insanely successful movie podcast. It is. It is. There's no laughter here. The laughter from you is I don't know, unwarranted. My good friend, and soon to be yours if you've never heard him before, the host of the Projection Booth podcast, Mike White.
I'm so evil, I'm twirling my mustache.
Literally. Oh my God. And on this episode of the Bollywood Cinema Club, we're going to be taking a look at a film from 1998 directed by Rajkumar Santoshi called China Gate. This film is, like I mentioned, directed by Rajkumar Santoshi, based off a screenplay by Rajkumar Santoshi, Anjuman Rajibali, and KK Raina. And it stars a whole lot of people. It is an ensemble cast, friends. It is an ensemble cast of 10 rugged, older, disgraced military men who take it upon themselves to save a city from the nasty, mustache-twirling dacoit that is Jagira. And yeah, right. It's like Sholay with 8 more people.
It's totally Sholay. Thank you so much for just putting that out there.
It's just Sholay with 8 more people.
Yeah. I mean, it's the Seven Samurai. They actually acknowledge Akira Kurosawa at the beginning of the film, not in the rating credits, but that was kind of nice that they had a little the late Akira Kurosawa.
Yeah. So Mike, let's talk a little bit about China Gate. This is something that we've kind of been trying to do for a while because this movie is not exactly easy to get a hold of at all, frankly. Even to watch it with English subs was an uphill battle because there was never a point when I was watching it where they were really synced up very well. So. No. So this movie was kind of hard to watch, which is it's gonna unfortunately affect probably our feelings on the movie, but that out of the way right at the top, because most of the time when we talk about movies, I normally say Netflix or Prime Video or even YouTube, because this is on YouTube, but you're not going to have any idea if you're looking for English subs where to find them because they're literally in one spot on the internet and they're not very good either. All that out of the way, Mike, what did you think about finally sitting down to watch China Gate, which you had to buy?
I did buy this one. I had this one a long time ago. A friend of mine had recommended it. And it's funny because he also recommended Sholay. So he must have known that I'm a big Seven Samurai fan, was just like, oh, here's 2 movies that you'll like.
Right.
And China Gate, very unusual film because there's only one song in the whole thing, which was amazing. I was just like, what the hell is going on? It was like an hour into it. I was like, did I miss something? Did I buy the wrong version of this movie? There's no song in this. And yeah, my version on DVD, subtitles are probably better than yours, though they were in a serif font, which was kind of weird. And the picture was, what do they call that? Window box or something? It was like there was black bars on the side as well as the top and bottom. And I was looking for that feature I used to have on my DVD player where you could like blow up the image a little bit. Cause I was like, if you just made it a little bigger, it would take up the whole width. It was definitely encoded before widescreen TVs were a thing. All that said, I really enjoyed this movie. I do love the Seven Samurai. I grew up watching Battle Beyond the Stars, that Corman version of the Seven Samurai. I think he might have done a couple, but yeah, I like this one a lot, though I missed the song and dance stuff, which was weird for me to say because that used to be the thing where it's just like, oh my God, here they go singing again. But now I kind of dig it.
Mike is, as a seasoned film goer, is now more interested in watching them having fun. I want them to have a sense of joy in these.
There wasn't a lot of joy in this film.
Well, that is the thing, mention. It kind of feels unfair now to mention Sholay, because Sholay is, what do you say? I mean, Sholay is just fucking amazing.
It's epic.
Yeah, it's got everything that you want, and it has Amitabh Bachchan. So there you go. I mean, it has everything. Fantastic villain, fantastic music, great charisma, but and kind of chemistry between everybody, including the 2 main leads. It's kind of unfair because this movie really does live in the shadow of Sholay, unfortunately, in my mind. But that being said, I did like this movie a fair amount, primarily because of all of the cast.
Oh, yeah.
The four main leads, Om Puri, Amrish Puri, Naziruddin Shah, and Danny Dingzongpa, I have seen them in other things. Obviously, Amrish Puri, for many Westerners, is going to be known for it. Literally one's Mola Ram and Doom. Naziruddin Shah, I just saw him in Sarfaraz, he was fantastic there, but he playing a very different character. And then Danny Dingzongpa was in Entharan or Robo as the villain. And I'm trying to remember what I saw Om Puri in, but these are like the big actors for their time all coming together, at least the first three, maybe not so much Danny Dingzongpa, but the first three, Om Puri, Amrish Puri, and Naziruddin Shah, them three together on screen, whenever they're on screen together, is fantastic. And that honestly, for me, feels like what the movie should have been really leaning on even more than it did, is those interact between the leads. Because, yeah, these are some of the biggest names in Indian cinema from the 80s and 70s, all together on screen.
I was just so happy that I managed to pick up some of the things that are there, but not spelled out, at least for a while. Like the whole thing of the one guy being a Muslim. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, for some reason, I don't know what tipped me off, but I was just like, he stands apart from these other guys, and I can't exactly tell why, but there was something about him where there was some line or something where I was just like, oh, okay. And it might have been like something about what he eats or something like that. And then him just getting tormented and having his house burned down. I was like, each one of these guys doesn't have anything to live for. This was like a very good Seven Samurai. It was Seven Samurai mixed a little bit with, and I hate to say this, the Expendables, but I mean, these guys are expendable. These guys are old. One guy's on the verge of suicide when he gets that very fateful knock at the door.
Literally.
Like, so, yeah.
Deus Ex door knock.
And like, none of them really, I mean, there's the one younger guy whose dad was part of this outfit that these guys were with. I don't think do we ever really get the history of why they were all court-martialed because of the China Gate incident?
They just left. They like abandoned their platoon is kind of what they say. It's like, I couldn't tell if it's because they abandoned it or they just weren't successful in what they were doing.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I kept waiting for like a flashback about maybe 2 hours and 15 minutes into this movie to tell us what really happened and to make it that we even care more about these guys because of what happened at China Gate. It feels like that was a real missed opportunity. But to your point, it's a little paths of glory, like something happened and these guys took the fall, and you can just tell because they seem like very noble people, like they got the shaft, but we're not exactly sure why. And yeah, I really wish they explored that a little bit more.
But I love that shot of Anupam Kher at the beginning of the movie ripping Om Puri's jacket.
Yes.
It's so good. Anupam Kher is not in the movie very much. It's what they would call a special appearance. Obviously, he was in DDLJ. He played Shah Rukh Khan's dad in that film. Fantastic actor in his own right. But yeah, it very much is. Trying to remember the American movie that has like Ernest Borgnine in it. You know what I'm talking about? Where they're like, it's not Dirty Dozen, but isn't this this is like an ensemble. This is a Western, right?
Like I guess. The Wild Bunch?
Yeah, the Wild Bunch, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of Seven Samurai in and of itself, right? Everything's kind of, these kinds of things are all kind of just inspired by Seven Samurai.
Right. I mean, the thing that I usually like about those and like what I like about Seven Samurai is the gathering of the team. Mm-hmm. We don't have that too much because all of these guys already know each other.
Right.
There's also the character who is the outsider. You could say the Chishiro Mifune character from the Seven Samurai. And with this, it's the younger guy, like I was saying before. And I like that he's kind of the outsider and the way that he eventually gets integrated into the group after he really lets the one guy have it when he's drunk. I think all of these dynamics work pretty well, is what I'm trying to say.
I agree. Samir Soni as Uditanshu Tadan, the kind of I'm just here because my dad's dead.
Right.
Which I love that kind of character where it's like you are the stand-in for someone else, but again, like you said, by the end of it, he becomes part of the group in a massive. I'm with you. The thing about these kinds of movies is exactly what you said. The idea of like bringing a team together all these different personalities, big, small, and everything in between. And you get to see those personalities play off of one another. I like these kinds of movies. And I think this one is a very successful one in spite of some weird choices. Like you said, the thing with the music. Because, man, Chama Chama is such a well-known song, such a amazing song. It shows up in Baz Luhrmann's films later on.
Right.
I mean, I would think in a lot of ways, Chama Chama has kind of exceeded the film in a lot of ways. Like the song itself is probably more popular than the movie is now. I'm sure it still gets play today. I mean, it's a catchy earworm of a tune. It almost feels like it doesn't belong in this movie, like at all.
So does and I originally, the way that it's shot, I'm like, okay, these are the villagers and they're having a little celebration, even though it's like not quite the time to celebrate.
The bad guy is captured, but like bad guys get captured all the time in these kinds of things.
Exactly.
That ensures nothing.
And then all of a sudden, I'm trying to remember the lady's name, Urmila Motandkar, who we just saw in Rangeela a few months or however long ago that was.
Almost a year ago now.
Oh my God, she's so gorgeous. I love looking at her and she looks amazing. This outfit and the song is fantastic. And I'm like, it feels like it doesn't even belong to this movie. Then all of a sudden our soldier guys show up and I was like, oh, okay, this is shot for the movie. It felt like it was shot for something else and they just kind of slid it right inside of here.
Yeah.
And even then it's like, they don't do a whole lot of like dancing and singing. They're just kind of like standing around. It's not a real, like, she dances, she sings, all the people behind her dance and sing, but our main characters don't join in where it's just like, boom, let's go. And we're dancing and going crazy. No, they're just pretty like standing around.
Other than Amrish Puri, who really belts it out. I appreciate
that's true.
He just goes for it. I think Amrish Puri may be one of my favorite Indian actors, period. I mean, the look of him, obviously, again, I'm a little biased but I'm also really biased because he is Kajol's father in DDLJ, and he's one of the biggest parts of that movie, and one of the more memorable relationships is the relationship that him and Shah Rukh Khan have together in that film, and their scenes together are electric. And this is like a young Shah Rukh Khan too, like up against Amrish Puri, who in 1992 he was Amrish Puri then. Shah Rukh Khan was not SRK then; he was Shah Rukh.
Right.
But Amrish Puri and Om Puri in this movie elevate it a lot. I don't know. I know why there's a musical number in this movie, but now we see contemporary Indian cinema that doesn't have it. Like Sardar Udham, Andhandhun only has 2 or 3 songs, and they're more or less diegetic in the way that they're presented. Like, I understand and appreciate the need and maybe the wanting of the filmmakers to include a musical number in a movie like this, but it almost overshadows parts of it and how good it is. And again, the song alone ends up being so popular that, again, it's like a lot of things where people don't know what it's from. They just know the song. And that's it. The fact that this movie is rather hard to find is, in my mind, kind of an indicator of maybe where this movie is remembered in Indian cinema. And that's unfortunate because when it came out, very successful, very well regarded. So it's not like this movie wasn't a successful movie. And at the time, it was the most expensive Bollywood film ever made. Wow. So this was a big deal when it came out. So I guess they felt obligated to have a musical number. But the fact that it's like on the box or the poster for the movie and it's one scene is a tad odd, Frank.
Yeah, because the way that it looks like she's in every scene, she's the woman that they're all going to desire or something. And that's not the case at all. I mean, she is not the, is it Mamta Kalkarni or something? The woman from the village who comes to them and says, I need your help because we're being terrorized by this village around here.
Oh, the one whose father gets
right, exactly. Yeah. So, and she eventually becomes the love interest of the younger guy. So they've got that story going on, though not a lot. Like, it really doesn't become very much of a love story. It's more of we have 2 young people that are here together. Her father's dead, his father's dead. They would make a natural couple. I found it more interesting, the one character who was very concerned about the little girl who was selling like little animals that she was making, and her uncle was having her go out there, and her uncle's just this layabout and keeps threatening to sell her. I love that whole relationship that was going on there. And when they used the uncle to set them up with the villain. I was like, oh man. So I really, there were some good turns, and I was very emotionally invested in this film.
I was too, and obviously it really does just go to the main cast of the 10. I know we've talked about the big ones, but then you have someone like Tinu Andan who plays the guy with the dog, essentially.
Oh yeah, he's
the guy with the dog is the only way to put it. But
yeah,
and they're like, again, it's not that they're minor characters, but they're not given as much time as, again, I think Om Puri and Amrish Puri, and I would go as far as to say Nazi Rudin Shah and Danny Denzongpa are the main actors. And then everybody else kind of is a secondary or third, even like tertiary. Even the tertiary characters out of the 10 still get moments, even if it's, right before they die is kind of what it feels like in some way.
Yeah.
Which is this movie, this type of movie in a nutshell in a lot of ways. But I do like how they do really give every single one of those 10 characters a distinctive point of view and persona that, unlike something like, say, the fantasy equivalent of Seven Samurai, The Hobbit, like those characters in that movie get lost. They're not unique. And this movie can show you this is what, too shy of that?
Yeah.
And and each of these characters is a unique character that has a interesting persona that stands out from the other ones. And that's not easy to do. And that for me is one of the biggest successes on Rajkumar Santoshi's part, is the writing of it.
Yeah. And this takes place over a period of 3 hours, not 9 hours like those Hobbits, where, you got the old one, you got Durin or whatever the guy's name is, and then you got the one who's trying to make it with the elf. The rest of them, you got the fat one, the one with the beard. Oh, wait, no, they all have beards except for that one guy. So it's like, no, they definitely do a better job being more economical here, introducing these characters, keeping your interest. Some of the things that we have, like the bus ride to the actual place that they're going, the train and then the bus, and just how they're bickering, and you can tell they're not a team at that point, how it takes all of these incidents to make them come together and finally be able to defeat evil. Yeah, to your point, evil is very difficult to defeat. That it takes a few times, and especially because there's corruption in the system, and that one of the local policemen is totally in bed with this guy, not literally, but totally in bed with this guy, to just be like, oh, sure, yeah, no, I'm taking you to jail, and lets him go. It's like, okay, off you go again to cause more havoc. And he's a great villain. He is just total id the whole time. Like I said, mustache twirling. He doesn't really have a mustache. He's got that huge, great big bushy beard, but he's just, man, oh man, he's really enjoying being bad.
Yeah, Mukesh Tiwari is as good as the villain is in Sholay. That this movie and Sholay do have a lot of things in common, but one of the things it really shares is a just nasty bastard, dirty. Like, again, he feels like what would be in like a Western, an American Western, like the banditos, essentially. Like, hiding out in the rocks, enforcing his will upon the villagers, and ultimately, just causing havoc. It could have been a thankless role if the person doing it wasn't really going for it, but Mukesh Tiwari just goes for it every time he's on screen.
Oh, yeah.
He's fantastic.
I was just saying, I was very surprised that he doesn't have more of like a second in command that is very recognizable, because that's always a trope, or even even a third, like you get your, Ramon plus his two brothers in something like Fistful of Dollars.
Right.
And it's like, okay, we know that what's going to go, and they're going to play against each other, or like try to be the better brother. Doesn't happen here, but that's okay.
Well, I mean, they have the cop, right, who is, I guess, kind of his second in command, but he never really gets his comeuppance in a satisfying way, given that he essentially causes the death of Naziruddin Shah's character, Sarfaraz. So he doesn't, I don't feel like he gets his comeuppance, unfortunately.
He doesn't. He needs a very painful death.
Right. Given what ends up happening to Naziruddin Shah, just getting brutalized after Jagira is let go, intentional. And the thing that you mentioned about there not being a second in command, I think my only complaint, or biggest complaint, if you want to put it that way, critique with the movie is a little. It's it is a 2 hour and 47 minutes. It's a long movie, and I don't know if it justifies 2 hours.
I was up for it just because I remember the original Seven Samurai takes about 3 hours to get through, I think. But I was surprised because I was like, well, it's an Indian movie. There's going to be 5 dance numbers at least. No. So then
That's
when
the
it was,
expectation.
yeah. So then when it was an hour in and I'm just like, no singing, no dancing, what's going on? And I was like, really? Is this going to be 3 hours with no music? This is kind of wild because, yeah, I'm used, all of these Indian films are very long usually. I don't think I've ever sat that goes 3 hours, maybe. But
DDLJ, baby. It's 3 hours and like 12 minutes.
Did I see DDLJ?
I don't think so. You should. I mean, it's one of the, if you're going to watch one romantic comedy in Indian cinema, it's going to be either DDLJ or Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, which is essentially DDLJ spiritual sequel. So I don't know if you've seen it. I always kind of wondered if you had, because it feels like something someone would have told you to see at some point.
Yeah, no, I'm surprised. I need to see it because I know you've brought it up several times over our recordings and it sounds great. So I'll definitely check it out. Is that one on Netflix?
It's on Prime Video, I think. Okay. Yeah. And that I feel like, again, like I really can't stress enough how fucking hard it is to find it. Like that would almost be for me a disqualifier in a little way. Like, and that, that's on me as the person doing this show and programming the show, because I never wanted to make this show where people couldn't go out and watch the movie. Because the point of this show, one of the police, is you can go watch these too, and you should. And there's absolutely no way to watch this movie, which is a shame, and that's a problem. And it's more surprising than anything else, given the amount of star power on screen, not just the caliber.
Yeah, I felt bad, frankly, when it was this hard to find it. And why? Why is it this hard to find? It's not a bad movie. It's a great movie. Is it just the lack of songs? Is that what happened to it?
I have no idea. I don't understand. It was, again, really well regarded when it came out. The reviews at the time are about how good the writing is and how Raj Kumar really lands, the direction of this kind of movie. Not that he hadn't made this kind of movie before, but he was kind of working all over the place. He'd make action movies and dramas and comedies. But then, I mean, again, this is the biggest budget Indian film, Bollywood time. So a big expectation here. It is surprising that even that qualifier alone doesn't make it more popular, or the fact that the song alone being so popular doesn't cause people to ask, where did this come from? What movie is this from? But then again, like we've already kind of mentioned, you can watch the musical number completely out of context and get the same out of it that you would if you were watching it in the context of the film.
Right.
I was surprised it's not on. I was surprised it wasn't on Eros Now or. Again, almost all the movies we've ever done on this show are on YouTube, but most of them don't have subtitles in English. There are some that do, and we'll be doing episodes on some of those movies because I've already looked ahead and programmed them, and there are some movies on YouTube with perfect English subtitle. This is not one of them. There's not even a very good copy of this on YouTube. I mean, the one copy that's out there is decent, but none of this should be this hard for a movie that came out post-90s, even in India.
Right. Yeah. It should be right there for us. But yeah, I was very surprised. And the versions that are out on YouTube, are they dubbed or are they original?
They're original language.
Okay, that's good at least.
Yeah. There's no dubs or anything of this. So that's kind of the only, other than the length of the movie being just a little long in the tooth, but that's because, again, I was expecting more spectacle of a different kind, right? Like you said, with the musical numbers. And again, musical numbers aren't guaranteed in Indian cinema, but they add a flavor to the film that is, again, like we said, not expected, but it's definitely yearned for when you're watching a movie. Like I watched another film, Sardar Udham, which came out last year, and it has no music, but it's more or less it's contemporary Indian filmmaking based on a lot of Western ideas and Western ways of doing things. And again, when we think of Indian cinema, a lot of Westerners think of just, women dancing and songs, and that's it. They can't even fathom that there are movies like this, an action or and I don't know. It's weird to me because when people think of Japanese cinema or Chinese cinema, if they even do, unfortunately, in this country, so ethnocentric about Western cinema, at least where they only speak English. I just wonder what the other stereotypes are for those cinema. Like, what's a Japanese cinema stereotype? Like, I don't even, what does that even mean? But for Indian cinema, the stereotype is there's going to be musical numbers, to the point where every time I've had someone on this show, we end up having a variation of this conversation. And it's always interesting to hear everybody else's kind of perception going into something like this, because everybody's perception is exactly what you've said. I was expecting there to be X in a quantity of Y, and there was X in the quantity of much less than Y, in a way that now it's more acceptable and kind of understood now. But at the time, like the musical number is good, but at the time, like, I can't help but wonder, like, yeah, the people that went to see this may have been kind of disappointed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I watched Zinda, the Indian version of Old Boy, there weren't, because I was just like, oh my God, ha ha ha, Old Boy with song and dance. And there are songs in it that are somewhat featured, but they're more, like you were saying, more diegetic at points, or like a guy's rushing across to get from one place to another, and there's a big song that's playing. It's not like there's any sort of choreography when it comes, there's no dancing, basically.
I mean, like in Dongal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which they're actually, like, that could have worked. And it works, it really works well in Dongal. Like, it's not that in that movie I wouldn't have liked to have the characters, doing a musical number together, but the way that they do it through the montage, it totally makes sense in the kind of the narrative that they're telling. They could have done that. They could have done something similar, because we do have essentially 10 opportunities to have 10 different kinds of songs, or one montage song of them all coming together. And I don't know how that didn't happen, because that for me is like a weird thing that totally should have happened.
Well, yeah. Can you imagine if they each had like their own type of theme or something, and they started to blend together as the characters were going,
I know.
Yeah.
The movie that seemingly we would have, I guess. Yeah. It's weird, because again, they're so interesting and they're all such fun characters that you want to see kind of the more, not fun side of them, but you want to see them doing less things directly related to plot of Jagira dealing with the town and being a nuisance. You want to see them just, like you've already mentioned, just kind of hanging out with each other. Those are the best parts of the movie, is when they're just kind of all together training, because they end up having to train at one point because, old dudes in their 70s, I guess, completely out of shape after the military, they're all having to go and run around. There's another opportunity song about how they're all out of shape and beaten up. Like, movie, like, you're 2 hours and 47 minutes long.
Yeah. We are trying to help you out.
Yeah. And that's the thing with something like this, if you think about it, 5 musical numbers, those musical numbers tend to be 3 to 5 minutes. That's almost 20, 25 minutes. Sometimes even a half an hour of your movie is musical numbers. That's why I was expecting this movie is as long as it. Like you said, just fuck me, I guess. Fuck me and my expectation. I think the movie does a bad job of setting your expectations just with the poster, just with what that is. Like, it should be all of them on the post, like, that you can see, not, Umila Mondakar doing her hand. Like, it's great, but I don't know. I'm glad that I'm seeing more Indian cinema that is challenging me to not just say, oh my God, this is amazing, I love it, I want to see it. I'm glad that I'm seeing more movies that are kind of not as successful as some of the other ones that I've seen. This one, I think, though, is still pretty successful, even in spite of the length of the movie. I think there is enough there with those just interacting with each other. I mean, again, like the action scenes, I don't know. It's an action movie. What was kind of your thoughts on the action?
I was hoping that they'd have a little bit more. I was hoping that they would have, like, right when they get to town, that something happens. We've got the establishment of how bad our bad guy is, but I was hoping almost as soon as they get to town that there was some sort of demonstration of just how awful he is. Even maybe if they lost a guy right off the bat or something, that would be something. Because of course, nobody can make it through this. There are very few people that make this through this movie alive, as I say.
Half of them?
Yeah, I think it's 5 or 6 people on that bus. But even then, one of those people might be the girl, so it might just be the 4 of the guys make it out. I don't know.
It's Alm Puri, Amrish Puri, and Danny Dingzongpa make it out, and then Samir Soni does as well. And I think the guy with the dog does, right? Tinu Andhan does as well. That's
You
it.
can't kill the dog. That was one thing I almost looked up. I almost went to doesthedogdie.com and see if he makes it out. Good thing. It was the guy with the cancer. He ends up making it out. And I'm just like, wait, no, of all people, he should go.
Right. Nope.
No, that was very surprising. I think that's what it was. I think it was something to do with the blood of the Muslim guy, because there's the blood of the guy because they need a transfusion at one point. There's the guy with the cancer is like, I can't give you my blood. And that's a very big moment. And I want to say that they might say something about the Muslim guy at that point.
Did you recognize Viju Kote, the gunner, as one of the dudes Gabbar Singh kills in Sholay when they're doing the Russian roulette scene?
No.
Yeah, which is
wow.
funny that he's one of the 10 guys in this movie, but I'm pretty sure he's one of the ones that doesn't make it out.
Okay.
Yeah, but it cracked me up because I had to go and look, and I was like, pretty sure that's the guy from Sholay who Gabbar Singh just kills in that the kind of one of the more memorable scenes of that movie, the Russian roulette scene. But some of the choices are kind of strange. I know why Naseeruddin Shah's character dies because he is a main character, but I like Naseeruddin Shah so much as an actor that I didn't want to see him kind of not make it to at least the climax of the movie.
Right.
But again, to up the stakes and to really hammer home how bad of a guy Jagira is, as if it's impaling people on things and cutting their heads and arms and shit. It's just there's not a lack of bloodshed in the movie and body parts getting rended from their human owners. I mean, Jesus Christ, Jagira just goes and just makes. So he cuts one guy's hands off, he cuts another dude's head off, and then Naseeruddin Shah just shoots him. It's only 2 times, but it feels like it takes much longer to kill him in a rather extended death scene that, at times is a little hard to watch, obviously, because they're just fucking playing with him, playing with their food, but it's not a movie without blood, at least kind of gory, frankly.
Yeah, which was a little surprising for me because I'm not used to that necessarily.
Well, it just feels in a lot of ways, Indian cinema is very matter of fact. You cut someone's hand off and blood's going to shoot out. In a Western movie, it would probably, depending on the rating, right? Your hand gets cut off in a PG-13 movie, you don't bleed, wrap it up, or you don't show it or something. And here it's just very matter of fact. Dude's running, guy gets his hands. That's just... It's kind of strange, but it works tonally with this. But they kind of do get into hot water sometimes where it'll be in a movie that it tonally doesn't make any sense. Like in PK, there's a scene a character gets blown up in a bomb in this movie about Amir Khan playing an alien.
Right.
And it completely comes out of nowhere. I know you've seen it, and it's just such a strange story. But again, it's so matter of fact that it's just yep, and that's what happened, and that's the way it is. I kind of get the sense and get the feeling that that is, for me, has been a recurring theme with Indian cinema of we're just going to sometimes just kind of show you the way it is, not try to stylize it or I guess sanitize it, because they don't have to show all the blood and gore in this movie. They choose to, which is perfectly fine. It is kind of just weird.
Yeah, it is. It feels a little out of left field at times. I don't have a whole lot more to say about this.
No, I don't either. And I'm kind of disappointed by that because it was a okay movie in a lot of ways that probably is 3 or 4 notches higher just primarily because of the act. This plot, this story is not anything unique, again, to the point where it's literally paying homage to Seven Samurai in the credits. So these movies only really work if you can cast the right people. Case in point, that what was that movie that came out the year you and I were at TIFF? That remake, the remake of one of these.
Magnificent Seven.
Yeah, that movie came out, and the only reason anybody would go see it is because of who they would cast, and they cast Chris Pratt and blah blah blah, all these big name actors. This is the same thing. You're coming to see this movie for who's cast in it, not what they're doing. And I think this movie does a good enough job of keeping you engaged throughout, but some of the story beats don't really pay off. And the thing with the guy had, some of the stuff with some of the village people, I think they maybe spent a little bit too much time with the police, but and I only say that because of how lacking and wanting I was with that payoff with that secondary villain. It just kind of, it feels like they put all their eggs into the basket of Jagira, which makes perfect sense. Fantastic performance. But if your movie is 2 hours and 47 minutes, you got to give us another conflict or a flashback or something more just to up the stakes. Because again, the chemistry between the characters is there. I just think the story is not as exciting or as interesting as the actors interacting with each other, at least the main 10. And I think that for me is coupled with the fact this movie's hard to find. Not say this movie is not worth checking out, but you want to watch something like this, just watch Sholay, which is either on Netflix or Prime, either one. But it's going to be there forever because it's one of the pillars of 70s Indian cinema. This movie, again, Chama Chama, that's probably what most people, contemporary Indian teenagers and Indian people my age and your age, probably, if they've never seen the movie, they have 100% heard the song. Because I'd heard the song without seeing this. You had too, especially if you've ever watched Moulin Rouge. It's front and center in that movie, frankly. So
yeah, I think if I had to put them head to head, Sholay would, but I think China Gate's got a lot to offer. But yeah, as far as like going as far as we went and ordering the disc or downloading the movie and syncing up the subs and all that kind of stuff that you had to go through, no, don't bother. Like if it's available on Netflix or Prime or Eros or any of those, I would say, yeah, it's worth your time, but don't go out of your way.
Even if you could rent it for $2 on Prime Video, because
exactly
one of the later movies this month is, I found it, but you could rent it for $2 on Prime Video too. And, with synced up English subs. And that, again, that might not sound like much if you're listening to this film or you're listening to this podcast and you can speak Hindi and you don't have to worry about subtitles. But the fact that it's hard to find these movies dubbed is a unintentional stumbling block to finding some of them. Because I get, it's not that I didn't anticipate it. Obviously, I had been dealing with it for the last 3 years, but I had been making sure in the last 3 years that it was Prime or Netflix or Eros. And the moment you deviate away from one of those is you kind of just jump into the deep end and hope and pray that you can make something work. This is the first time I've really gotten frustrated trying to find something for this show. Really, like going back and searching multiple times and trying to find different websites or different subtitle tracks or something. And like, that's never a good sign for an episode to start with. But the movie ends up being good enough that, yeah, I'm with you. I wouldn't suggest it, but when hopefully it gets a re-release or something, or somebody makes it available to be rented, definitely worth checking out. It's just a little, it's one step too far in the able to find it category. Even something like Charulata, a film that's from like the 60s, is easier to find than Grand Theft Auto Criteria. So, Mike, until the next time you're on the Bollywood Cinema Club, where could people find you?
Well, Chris, you can always find me and a whole lot of other great shows over at weirdingwaymedia.com. It's the place to be, the place to get your entertainment, all free, all great stuff.
Yeah. I'm not going to plug Weirding Way Media because you just did, but BollywoodCinemaClub.com, like, rate, and review on iTunes and Spotify. That's all you need to do to help us out and or follow us on social media. There you go. Mike, thank you so much for joining me.
Chris, thank you so much for having me. I always appreciate talking to you about these films.
Maybe the next one we watch won't be as hard to find.
You can hope.
One can hope. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next episode.